My name is Stacy. I'm 38 years old. 10 years ago, my sister showed up at my door with her 4 kids. She didn't bring luggage, just tired eyes and excuses. She shoved the kids toward me like they were packages she was done carrying. Then she said the words that still echo in my head. I just need a little break. Can you handle them for a while? I should have said no. I should have asked where she was going, why her hands shook when she handed me the baby, why she couldn't even look me in the eye. But instead I nodded. Because what else was I supposed to do? Those kids looked at me with wide, scared eyes, clutching each other like the ground beneath them was crumbling. The night was cold and the porch light flickered above us. I remember the smell of her perfume fading as she walked back to her car. I stood there, holding her youngest in my arms, while the older 3 clung to my legs. I'll be back in a week, she promised. The engine roared and then she was gone. Inside, the house felt too small for their cries. The baby wailed until his face turned red. The oldest, barely 10, tried to hush the others but ended up crying himself. I laid blankets on the floor, spread them out like some kind of emergency shelter, and whispered, "It's going to be okay." But even then, my voice cracked. I didn't believe my own words. I kept glancing at the door, waiting to hear her footsteps return. Every car that passed outside made me freeze, thinking maybe it was her. Hours slipped into midnight, and midnight slipped into morning. Still, no knock on the door. Just silence broken by sobs. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch rocking the baby while the other 3 finally drifted off, curled up together like they were protecting each other from the truth. That's when the dread settled in, not like a sharp stab, but like a heavy stone in my chest. This wasn't a break. This wasn't temporary. The next day I tried calling her. No answer. I left messages that grew more desperate each time. "Hey, it's me. Just checking in." Then, "The kids are asking about you. Where are you?" Finally, "Please, call me back, please." The kids kept asking when their mom was coming home. I didn't know what to say. I stirred macaroni on the stove, the cheapest meal I could think of, and muttered lies I hoped sounded gentle. She just needs some time. She'll be back soon. But every time I said it, I saw the doubt in their eyes. Kids know when adults are lying. They feel it, even if they don't understand it. By the 3rd night, their routine was already changing. They clung to me instead of asking for her. The little one called out "Mama" in the dark, and my heart broke because he was talking to me, not her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive across town and shake her, demanding how she could just walk away from 4 lives like they were nothing. But all I could do was hold those kids tighter. Days turned into weeks. Bills piled up, groceries ran thin, but I kept moving. Every bedtime I tucked them in and whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "You're safe now. I've got you." The neighbors started whispering too. They'd see me with 4 kids trailing behind and ask where their mother was. I laughed it off, saying she was sorting things out, but deep inside, I knew the truth. One night, as the kids finally drifted off, I sat alone in the kitchen with only the hum of the fridge for company. I stared at my phone, no missed calls, no messages. Just silence. I lowered my head into my hands, and for the first time, I admitted what I hadn't dared to say out loud. "She's not coming back," I whispered to myself, and I was right. She never did. The mornings hit me hardest. 4 kids to get ready before sunrise, lunches packed with whatever scraps I could stretch into meals, school shoes that didn't quite fit anymore. I'd rush from one to another, wiping jam from a cheek, tying laces, braiding hair, all while my own stomach growled because there was never enough for me. Bills stacked on the counter like an army waiting to crush me. Rent, utilities, food, it was endless. I took extra shifts, stayed up past midnight ironing clothes for neighbors, anything to scrape together a few dollars. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, but I didn't have the luxury of rest. What made it worse was my parents. You'd think they'd step in, at least for their grandkids. But instead, they shook their heads at me like I was the problem. My mother said, "You're ruining your future, Stacy. This isn't your responsibility." My father added, "Your sister made her choices. Why chain yourself to them?" I wanted to scream. Why chain myself to them? Because they were children. Because they had no one else. Because every time I looked into their eyes, I saw the hollow space their mother left behind. The nights were the heaviest. After school runs and endless chores, I'd lie awake listening for cries. Sometimes they came in whispers, soft sobs from down the hall. I'd crawl out of bed, sit at the edge of their mattress and rub their backs until they drifted off again. "You're safe," I whispered, though my own hands trembled with fear of how I'd make it through another day. Then came the youngest's birthday. He was turning 3. The kids had been buzzing about it for weeks, and I couldn't let it pass like an ordinary day. But when I opened my wallet, all I saw was emptiness. Rent was due. The fridge was nearly bare. I bit my lip until it bled. That afternoon, I walked into a pawn shop with my grandmother's bracelet in my hand. My stomach twisted as I slid it across the counter. The man weighed it, offered me a small stack of bills, and I took it with shaking hands. It felt like selling a piece of my past, but I told myself it was for their future. Back home, I baked a cake from scratch, flour dust rising in the air, sugar scattered like snow. The kids hovered in the kitchen, their eyes wide with wonder, like this was the grandest thing they'd ever seen. When we lit the candles, their voices joined in song, shaky but loud, and the birthday boy's face glowed in the flicker of the flame. He leaned forward, cheeks puffed, and blew them out in one try. Everyone cheered, and for a moment it felt like magic. The world outside was still cruel, but inside those walls, I had given them something beautiful. Later that night, after they were asleep, I sat at the table staring at the empty bracelet box. My chest ached with both loss and pride, because I realized something. Even with nothing, I had still managed to give them everything I could. I had nothing, but for them, I gave everything. The years slipped by faster than I could count. Each season left its mark. Shoes worn thin, jeans outgrown, birthday candles replaced again and again. Somewhere along the way, the children stopped calling me Aunt Stacy. The word just disappeared. One day it was Mom, and I didn't correct them. I couldn't. Teachers at school would pull me aside after parent conferences. "You're doing an incredible job," they said. I'd smile, thank them, and hold back the tears, threatening to spill. Because behind every compliment was a truth no one else could see. I was running on empty, but the kids were thriving. That was all that mattered, but not everyone was so kind. The neighborhood whispered. I heard it in the grocery store aisle, felt it in the sideways glances. "She stole her sister's kids," they said. "She wanted to play house." The words stung, but I learned to carry them in silence. I couldn't waste energy fighting shadows when I had 4 little lives depending on me. Still, at night, when the house was quiet, the whispers crept in. Doubt clawed at me. What if they were right? What if I had no claim to these children? My hands would tighten around the bedsheets, but then I'd hear a small voice call, "Mom?" From down the hall, and all the doubt melted away. I didn't need a blood tie to know the truth. One evening, while sorting through an old box of bills and receipts, I found something buried at the bottom. A crumpled envelope with my sister's handwriting on it. My heart thudded. I tore it open with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, half torn, words smudged and unreadable. What I could make out was jagged, almost haunting. "I'll come back. Soon, promise." The rest was gone, ripped or blurred by time. I stared at it for hours. Part of me wanted to believe it meant she cared, that she had intended to return. But another part of me knew better. Actions spoke louder than scraps of ink. That night, I sat on the porch, letter in hand, watching the kids chase fireflies in the yard. Their laughter filled the air like music, and I thought, why does she get to write promises on paper while I carry the weight of the real thing? The letter was the only proof she ever meant to come back. And yet, looking at the children, I realized something deeper. It didn't matter anymore whether she planned to or not. Because she hadn't. And I was the one still standing. My days blurred together like clockwork. Wake up before sunrise. Pack lunches. Drop kids at school. Work shift 1. Rush home, cook dinner. Help with homework. Tuck them into bed. Then drag myself to shift 2. By the time I stumbled home, the sky was already lightening with dawn. Vacations? Those didn't exist for me. Friends stopped calling after the first few years when I could never join them for coffee or birthday dinners. My dreams, the ones I once scribbled about in notebooks, faded into the background like ghosts. The life I had wanted slipped through my fingers, replaced by a life I never asked for, but couldn't abandon. And still, the kids thrived. Report cards taped proudly to the fridge. Soccer games where they scored goals and looked into the stands to find me cheering. School plays where they bowed, smiling, while I clapped louder than anyone else. Their joy became my fuel. When exhaustion threatened to break me, I wrote in journals. Page after page of tired handwriting, sometimes blotched with tears. I confessed my fear, my resentment, my aching body that longed for rest. But no matter how dark my words turned, I always ended the same way. They are worth it. Yet my parents, my own parents, still couldn't see. They compared me to my sister as though she were some shining star. My mother said, "She always knew how to shine, Stacy. You were never like her." My father added, "Your life looks so small. If only you had ambition like your sister did." Ambition. Shine. They spoke of her like she was a legend instead of a woman who vanished in the night. Their words sliced deeper than they knew, each one reopening a wound that never truly healed. I'd sit across from them at the table, smiling politely while they reminisced about their brilliant daughter. And all the while I thought, she abandoned her kids. I saved them. How is that shining? But I never said it out loud. I swallowed my anger, buried it under a mountain of responsibilities. Because fighting for their approval was like shouting into a void. The sting of injustice simmered inside me, quiet but fierce, waiting for the day it would finally erupt. And deep down, I knew that day was coming. 10 years passed like a single breath. The children were taller now, their voices deeper, their laughter louder. And the oldest, my boy who once cried himself to sleep clutching his siblings, was about to graduate. I ironed his gown the night before, smoothing every wrinkle with care. My chest swelled with pride. Tomorrow was supposed to be our moment. Proof that the sacrifices meant something. Proof that love had won. But the morning brought something else. The rumble of engines outside. A chorus of sirens that grew louder until red and blue lights painted the front of my house. I froze, the iron slipping from my hand. When I stepped outside, neighbors were already gathering, whispering behind cupped hands. Police cars lined the street. Officers climbed out, their expressions hard. One of them stepped forward, his voice steady but sharp. "Stacy, we have a warrant. You're under investigation for kidnapping 4 children." The world tilted beneath me. My ears rang. I stammered, "Kidnapping? These are my kids." The children rushed outside, panic in their eyes. "No!" the youngest screamed, clutching my waist. "She's our mom. Don't take her!" The others echoed his cries, their voices breaking with fear. But the officers didn't flinch. One began reading rights while another reached toward me. My blood turned to ice. The neighbors whispered louder now, some gasping, others shaking their heads. I could feel their judgment burn into my skin. I tried to stand tall, but my knees shook. "This is a mistake," I begged. I raised them. I gave them everything. But at that moment, none of it mattered. To the world, I wasn't a mother. I was a suspect. The children's screams pierced the air, raw and desperate. Their arms wrapped around me as though their grip alone could keep us together. My heart shattered, the edges sharp enough to cut me from the inside out. As the handcuffs clicked shut, cold against my skin, one thought thundered in my head. Who did this? Who wanted to tear us apart? And then it hit me. Only one person could twist the story that way. My sister. The police station smelled of stale coffee and bleach. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and unforgiving. My hands trembled as I filled out forms, but nothing compared to the chill that ran through me when I saw her. My sister. 10 years had passed, but I'd know that smirk anywhere. She walked in like she owned the room, her heels clicking against the tile floor. Designer clothes draped her body, sparkling jewelry catching the light. She looked like a success, like the golden daughter my parents always praised, and then her eyes locked on mine. "Stacy," she drawled, her lips curling into a smile sharp enough to cut. "You really thought you could replace me?" The words landed like a knife to the chest. My throat burned, but no sound came out. She had left me with 4 crying children and vanished into the night. And now, after a decade of silence, she stood here, not with apologies, not with gratitude, but with cruelty. The officers barely looked at me. They ushered her toward the desk, where papers were already waiting. "We'll begin custody transfer proceedings immediately," one said flatly. Custody transfer. The words echoed like gunshots in my head. The kids were huddled against me, their arms wrapped tight around my waist. The youngest buried his face into my shirt, sobbing. The oldest, my soon-to-be graduate, stood tall, his voice shaking as he shouted, "She's our mom! You can't take us!" Another officer leaned down, trying to peel him away. "Son, this isn't your choice." But he fought back, clinging tighter, tears streaking his face. "It is my choice. She raised us. She's the only one who ever stayed." My sister laughed. Actually, I laughed. "Oh, Stacy," she said softly, almost like pity. "You really brainwashed them, didn't you? Poor kids. Don't worry, Mommy's back now." Mommy. The word tasted like poison. I stared at her, rage boiling beneath my skin, mixing with heartbreak until I could hardly breathe. "You left them," I whispered, my voice raw. "You abandoned them. And now you think you can just waltz back in?" She leaned closer, her perfume sickly sweet. "Yes, because unlike you, I'm their real mother." The betrayal was unbearable. My knees nearly buckled as officers pulled at the kids, trying to separate us. Their screams filled the station, a sound I'll never forget. The youngest clawed at my arms, wailing, "Don't let go! Don't let them take me." I wanted to fight, to tear the world apart with my bare hands if it meant keeping them. But handcuffs still bit into my wrists, steel against skin, reminding me I had no power here. The paperwork was signed. My sister's smirk grew wider with every line her pen touched, and in that sterile, unforgiving room, my family was ripped apart. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and old paper, heavy with the weight of too many broken families. I sat at the table beside my lawyer, clutching binders full of proof: school records, medical bills, report cards, photographs. 10 years of evidence that I hadn't kidnapped anyone. I had raised them. I had been their mother. Across the aisle, my sister sat like royalty. Expensive suit, flawless makeup, chin lifted as though she'd already won. She whispered to her attorney, smiling every so often as if this were all a performance she was enjoying. The judge's gavel struck, and the battle began. My lawyer stood first. His voice rang clear. "Your Honor, for 10 years, my client provided sole care for these children. She fed them, clothed them, educated them, nurtured them. We have receipts, school reports, and testimony from teachers who can verify her role as their primary caregiver." He slid forward the thick stack of documents. Pages that represented sleepless nights, missed meals, sacrifices no one but me would ever truly understand. Then my sister rose. Her lawyer's words dripped with venom. The defendant manipulated these children into believing she was their mother. She deliberately cut off contact from their biological parent. "This is a case of emotional kidnapping, Your Honor, brainwashing for her own selfish gain." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My hands shook, but I forced myself to stay still. And then came the blow that nearly shattered me. My parents were called to the stand. I prayed silently, desperately, that they would defend me. That for once in my life they would see what I had done. But instead, my mother's voice cracked as she said, "Stacy always had issues. She can be unstable, controlling. My other daughter deserves her children back. She's their real mother." My father nodded in agreement. "We always worried Stacy wasn't fit to raise kids. She never had the shine her sister did." The words stabbed deep, each one tearing away a piece of my heart. The kids were brought in next, their voices trembling as they spoke. The youngest whispered, "She's our mom. Please don't take us." The oldest stood tall, defiant. "She gave up everything for us. She's the only parent we've ever known." Tears blurred my vision as I listened. My children, my heart, were fighting for me in a room where even my parents had turned their backs. But the courtroom wasn't built on love. It was built on evidence, on perception, on power. And my sister had all of it on her side. By the time the session ended, the air was thick with tension. My lawyer squeezed my hand, whispering, "We'll fight this. Don't give up." But as I looked across the aisle at my sister's triumphant smile, I knew this battle was only beginning, and it was going to cost me everything. The courtroom felt like a furnace. Every breath seemed heavy, as though the walls themselves were pressing closer. The judge's eyes flicked between me and my sister, his gavel resting like a weapon on the bench. "Bring in the children," he said. My heart lurched. The doors opened and my 4 kids stepped inside, led by a court officer. They looked so small, so fragile in that massive room. But the way they glanced at me, eyes full of fear and determination, gave me strength I didn't know I had left. The judge's voice softened. "Children, we understand this is difficult. Just tell the truth." The oldest went first. His voice cracked, but he stood tall. "She raised us. She's the one who stayed when no one else did. She's our mom. The courtroom fell silent. My throat burned, tears stinging my eyes. Then the second child, a girl with trembling hands, whispered, "I don't even know her." She pointed toward my sister. Her voice broke into sobs. "Please don't make us go with her." Gasps erupted across the room. Even the stenographer paused for a heartbeat, the click of her keys stopping mid-word. My sister's face twisted, rage simmering just beneath the surface. She shifted in her chair, clutching her attorney's arm. The third child spoke next, holding back tears. "She tucked us in at night. She made our lunches. She's mom. That's it." By the time the youngest was asked to speak, the tension was unbearable. He clung to the microphone, his little hands shaking. "I don't even know who she is," he cried. "Don't take me away." The sound of his sobs echoed through the chamber, raw and shattering. My sister shot up from her seat, her chair clattering to the floor. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "She poisoned them against me. She brainwashed my children. Can't you see what's happening here?" Her words cracked like thunder, but instead of sympathy, the judge's gaze hardened. He banged the gavel. "Order! Sit down at once." She refused, pointing at me, spitting venom. "She turned them into weapons against me. She wants to steal everything that's mine." Her voice grew shrill, unhinged, echoing off the courtroom walls. The bailiff stepped forward, motioning for her to sit. For the first time in years, I saw cracks in her perfect mask. The polished, untouchable sister who had abandoned her kids now stood exposed, unraveling in front of strangers. I clutched my hands together under the table, feeling hope flicker for the first time in months. Not victory, just the faintest spark that maybe, just maybe, truth would matter. My sister stormed out before the judge could dismiss her, her heels striking like gunshots against the floor. The doors slammed behind her, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. The judge cleared his throat. "Court is adjourned until tomorrow." As the gavel fell, my kids ran to me, wrapping their arms around my waist. Their tears soaked into my clothes, their voices shaking as they whispered, "Don't let them take us." I held them close, whispering back, "I won't, I promise." For the first time, I believed it. By the next morning, exhaustion had hollowed me out. My eyes burned, my head pounded, but I walked into the courthouse determined. I couldn't fall apart now, not when everything was at stake. My lawyer placed a thick box of journals on the table. He leaned toward me. "Are you ready?" I nodded, though my chest was tight. Those journals were my soul on paper. Every sleepless night, every missed bill, every whisper, "It'll be okay." I told the kids when I wasn't sure it was true. When the hearing resumed, my lawyer stood tall. "Your Honor, today we present 10 years of documented care. These journals detail daily life, sacrifices, and the unwavering role my client has played as mother." He opened the first one and read aloud. "March 12th, 2014. Couldn't afford groceries this week. Pawned my necklace to buy birthday candles." The kids smiled. "That was enough," my sister scoffed. "This is a performance?" She's trying to win sympathy. But the judge's eyes lingered on the worn pages, the handwriting fading with time. My lawyer turned another page. August 2nd, 2017, double shift at work. Feet blistered, hands raw. But when I saw them asleep safe, I remembered why I can't give up. The courtroom grew quiet. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. My sister's attorney interrupted. "This doesn't prove financial responsibility," my lawyer countered, sliding forward folders of receipts, school tuition, doctor visits, shoes, food. She provided everything. The biological mother provided nothing. Not a single receipt. Not a single letter. The judge turned to my sister. "Do you have proof you supported your children during the past decade?" She shifted, flipping through her briefcase, pulling out glossy photos of vacations, parties, and expensive restaurants. I was rebuilding my life, preparing to provide for them properly when the time is right. The judge's brow furrowed. "So nothing? No records of child support, no correspondence, no evidence you even contacted them?" Her hands trembled as she fumbled with papers that didn't exist. Her confidence faltered, her perfect facade slipping further. My lawyer continued, holding up one of the last journals. October 15th, 2020. "The kids called me mom again today. I don't correct them. I don't have the heart to. Maybe I never will." Tears blurred my vision, but I kept my head high. This wasn't just evidence, it was my life laid bare. The judge sat back, silent for a long time. His fingers tapped against the bench, eyes fixed on me. Something in his expression softened. Meanwhile, my sister slumped in her chair, her face red with anger and humiliation. She whispered harshly to her lawyer, but her voice cracked, betraying her fear. For the first time, the balance in the room shifted. The tide was turning, and everyone could feel it. The air in the courtroom felt like glass, fragile, ready to shatter with the next word. My sister sat straighter than ever, her chin lifted, her smirk rehearsed. She leaned forward as though this was her final performance, the role she had been preparing for. "Your Honor," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "She isn't who she says she is. Stacy didn't rescue my children. She stole them. And worse, she stole from me." My heart stopped. She flipped through a folder, pulling out random papers, receipts that barely meant anything. She drained me dry. She used my name, my reputation, and left me to rebuild my life while she played house with my kids. Whispers rippled across the benches. The words "stole money" hissed through the crowd, landing on my skin like fire. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Do you have evidence to support this claim?" My sister's smile widened. "Oh, I don't need evidence. Just look at her life. Do you really think someone like Stacy could provide for 4 children on her own?" She must have used me. Heat rose in my chest. I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to speak out of turn. But my lawyer stood. "With respect, Your Honor, we do have evidence, and it tells a very different story." He carried forward a thick binder and placed it on the judge's desk with a heavy thud. "Financial records. 10 years' worth. Every bill, every payment, every sacrifice she made." The judge flipped through the pages. Gas bills. School tuition. Doctor's visits. Credit card statements in my name. Balances nearly maxed from years of survival. My lawyer's voice sharpened. "Notice who signed every check. Who pawned her belongings to buy food. Who worked double shifts to keep the lights on." He held up a small slip of paper, faded with time. "A pawn ticket, dated 3 years ago. She sold her grandmother's locket, one of her last heirlooms, just to buy a birthday cake." The courtroom stilled. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. That locket had been the only piece of jewelry I truly loved. Losing it broke me, but the smile on my child's face that night was worth more. My sister shifted in her seat, her perfect posture sagging under the weight of truth. The lawyer pressed on. If anyone drained resources, it wasn't Stacy. It was her sister, who abandoned her children, offered no support, and now attempts to rewrite history. The judge raised an eyebrow, his voice firm. "Do you have proof, ma'am, that you contributed financially to your children's lives during the past decade?" She fumbled with her folder, her hands shaking now. I don't have the records with me, but I know what happened. She twisted everything." Her words faltered, growing thinner with each breath. The mask she wore so tightly began to crack, and the courtroom saw it too. I exhaled slowly, my chest heavy but steady. For the first time, it wasn't my word against hers. It was truth against lies, and truth was winning. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with the sound of her empire crumbling, and I could feel it. The end was near. The day of the verdict, my hands trembled so badly I could barely hold my breath. The children sat behind me, clutching each other, their eyes wide with fear and hope. The judge entered, and the room fell into reverent silence. His robe swept behind him like a final act curtain. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began. "This case has revealed more than broken family ties," he said. "It has revealed resilience, sacrifice, and truth." Every word echoed against my chest like a drumbeat. The judge shuffled his papers. "The evidence is clear. Stacy has provided for these children in every way a parent should, financially, emotionally, and physically. She has been their mother in all but name." Tears pricked my eyes. My breath caught. He turned to my sister, whose face was pale, her jaw locked. "You abandoned your children. You offered no support, no presence, and today you brought false accusations in an attempt to reclaim them. For that reason, this court rules to terminate your parental rights." The words rang louder than the gavel. My sister gasped, clutching the table as though it were the only thing holding her upright. Then the judge turned back to me. "Stacy is hereby granted full legal custody of all 4 children." I couldn't breathe. For a moment, the world blurred like I was suspended between dream and reality. Then I heard it, the sound of chairs scraping, the cries of joy, the children rushing toward me. They barreled into my arms, sobbing, laughing, their voices overlapping. "Mom! Mom!" I collapsed into their embrace, my tears falling freely, my arms wrapped around them so tightly I thought I'd never let go. Over their shoulders, I saw my sister. She stood frozen, her expression shattered, as though she'd lost more than just a case. She had lost the illusion she built, the mask she wore, the control she thought she had. But I didn't care about her anymore. All I cared about was the warmth of 4 small bodies clinging to me, like I was the anchor in their storm. The judge's voice softened. "This time no one can take them away." I whispered the words aloud, my voice shaking. "This time, no one can take you away from me." The children cried harder, their relief pouring out after years of silent fear. The courtroom had witnessed every cut, every scar, every truth. And now it witnessed something greater, our healing. As we walked out of the courthouse together, the sun hit my face, bright and blinding. For the first time in a decade, I felt light. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were finally free. Months slipped by like pages turning in a book I never thought I'd get to finish. The chaos, the hearings, the sleepless nights filled with fear, those were behind us now. For the first time in 10 years, my mornings began with quiet. No dread, no waiting for a knock at the door. Just laughter drifting from the kitchen, the sound of cereal bowls clinking, and the peace that comes from knowing the storm has passed. The kids thrived in ways I hadn't even dared to imagine. The oldest, who once carried the weight of being the responsible one, finally smiled without fear. The younger ones no longer flinched at shadows, no longer asked in hushed voices if they'd be taken away. They belonged here with me, and more importantly, they knew it. I watched them run across the yard one afternoon, chasing each other through the fading light. Their sneakers tore into the grass, their laughter rising like music. For years, I had prayed just to give them safety. Now I realized I'd given them something far greater, a childhood they could finally enjoy. My sister, meanwhile, vanished as though the earth had swallowed her whole. Whispers swirled for a while, neighbors gossiping about her lies being exposed in court, her reputation crumbling piece by piece. Eventually, the whispers stopped, and so did the sight of her. I never saw her face again, not even at family gatherings. She became a ghost, a reminder of what abandonment really looks like. And my parents? They never once apologized. Not for the words that cut me down, not for siding against me, not for refusing to see the truth until it was laid bare in front of a judge. They still looked at me as though I had stolen something from them, when in reality, all I had done was protect what they refused to protect. But here's the thing, I didn't care anymore. The part of me that once craved their approval had finally died. I no longer lived for their validation. I no longer begged for scraps of love from people who had chosen favoritism and cruelty over fairness. I realized, standing there watching the kids chase fireflies, that I had built something stronger without them. Every sacrifice I had made, the jewelry pawned, the nights spent crying into a pillow, the exhaustion that nearly broke me, suddenly felt worth it. Because here, in the quiet of our little home, I had found the one thing they could never take away: family built on love, not bloodlines or empty promises. One night, as I tucked the youngest into bed, she grabbed my hand and whispered, "Mom, you made everything okay." Her words struck deeper than any court ruling or signature ever could. I kissed her forehead and turned off the light, my chest swelling with something I hadn't felt in so long: peace. Later, sitting at the kitchen table, I opened my journal again. The same journal that had carried every wound, every entry ending with "they are worth it." Now, for the first time, I didn't write about exhaustion or sacrifice. I wrote about freedom, about love that had endured, about healing. I set down my pen and whispered into the quiet, "Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying them, it's raising what they left behind into something beautiful." And in that moment, I knew I hadn't just survived the storm. I had built a life out of it.